Who are we watching for the spring practice? We are going to let you know who to key in on if you're coming down for the spring showcase. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Harings. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen. Today's episode, we're talking spring showcase. What players and what schemes and what things are we looking for? What should you key in on if you're coming down to check out the Badgers? Plus, how to replace Kevin Heywood and a bunch of buy or sells. Justin, let's start here, man. Spring showcase, what are you looking for? What should people coming down to see this program key in on?
Sure. And number one, I think we're all going to kind of want to see what this offense looks like from just stylistically standpoint. We want to see how different it looks compared to what we've been watching the last few years. And as somebody who's watched a fair amount of Kansas footage, it's going to look very, very different. There's the amount of motions and shifts in this offense are kind of ridiculous in comparison to what we did last year under Longo,
which was like zero.
Yeah. And beyond that, it's just a lot. I think what's going to happen is that the people who are used to growing up watching Badger football, a lot of it's just going to make more sense to us. Like, we're going to look at it and it's going to be, okay, I get this. This is something I grew up on. I understand it a little bit more. It's not going to be exactly the same as Chris or Barry Ball, but you'll kind of see how this is like the next level version of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say Longo would shift the running back from the left to the right side in the shotgun and be like, there, motion, done. Like, no,
Look,
guy.
I can see who's adjusting to
Stop. I was gonna actually ask you that because I think that's the next question, because I agree. The offense is what I wrote down first as well. Look for this, be excited for this, see something different. This would be fun. I was actually gonna ask, like, if you go back to Christ, more or less motion than Christ. And the other thing I'd add is there is going to be a quarterback mobility element to this. Yeah. That Chris typically didn't have.
So I will say, at least my perspective on this based off what I've watched, it probably compares favorably to 2011 Chris, not so much the version that we saw when Chris took over as head coach. Grimes does a lot more. There's more creativity there than we saw with late Paul Chryst. In fact, he does some really interesting things. Like, he does a lot of chipping with tight ends and leaks guys out. He does it with running backs. And they use those situations to create it where maybe you don't have a guy who's a super athlete, but you let the defense kind of make their decision, and then you have guys that just find space because the defender's not in position to make a play on it.
Yeah, and let me ask you, so I think I'm right there with you, because the way I kind of internalized it, Paul Chryst had a lot of motion to create leverage. He had a lot of motion to create power, a lot of motion to create unbalanced sides of the field.
Yep.
Whereas Grimes uses motion. He does that with motion as well. But he uses motion a lot of times to create deception, to create eye candy, to create hesitancy on the defensive side. I think that's some of the big difference between the two.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of, and Chris did some of this where he'd put the fullback out wide when he was coaching. The difference is that the way that you'll see it, the Grimes, I saw this and it made so much sense to me, and I was kind of shocked. I'm like, why have we never done that at Wisconsin? He'll go out and set up, go multiple with two receivers and a tight end out wide. And then he runs rub routes off of it. It's like a pick in basketball. You have a power forward that you're setting the pick with instead of a shooting guard then. Of course it's tougher for a guy to get around him when you have a 6'6" wide or tight end versus a 6 foot wide receiver who weighs 180 pounds. Like, some of the stuff just is common sense. And it's like, why have we never do that before?
I think it's like you said, it's another layer. And by the way, I don't know if we have that 6'6", 6'7" tight end anymore. Thank you, Tanner Koziel, you dork.
I think Ashcraft is at least 6'5".
Yeah, he's probably 6'5". He's a big body. I think it's just layers, though, like you said. Grimes has added some layers to what I think you would traditionally see at Wisconsin, with a little bit more motion, a little more deception, a little bit more scheming people open, and a little less relying on just a lot of power guys and then kind of leveraging in spots.
He does a lot of mesh and a lot of rub.
It's a little more creative. Yeah, he does a little bit more to get those receivers open. So I'm definitely looking at that. Next thing I'm going to give you, to me, it's we're going to get into players we're keying in on a second. So right now we're just kind of talking bigger picture things. I think it's that front seven on defense that everyone, it's the offensive differences, and it's also What has Tressel adjusted to this offseason?
Mhm.
Because we didn't change the defensive coaching staff. So Tressel has to make some adjustments. He has to make some changes. There's some bigger bodies there. I think everybody is going to be keyed in right away on that front
Mhm.
seven.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is I don't want to see guys getting washed out. You and I watched it all last season where you could call scheme all you want. The interior defensive lineman would be 6 yards downfield getting washed out by the offensive line. That can't happen. That's what I do not want to see that on Saturday. And I don't think we should. Like, the bodies that are going to be in there should be much more able to hold up to that than what we've seen the prior couple seasons.
Yeah. And I would suggest Badger fans, if you're coming in, bring a roster with you. I'm not sure if they'll have any there.
Oh.
There was a lot of new people.
30 plus new bodies.
Yeah. I would suggest we're talking front seven. Print out a roster so you know who. Well, Perkins kind of stands out. I'll tell you that. But so you know who they are, because you got
He's
Walker.
the one John every play.
You got Perk. You got Suggs. You got a Peterson who is built like he reminded me of like a refrigerator. Like, if you remember Little Giants, Ice Pick, or whatever his name, killed off with the refrigerator on his back. Yeah, Icebox. That kind of reminds me of Parker Peterson. But bring a roster so you know who's who. But yeah, I think it's that front seven that you're going to be keyed in on. And then I think it's the offensive alignments. Anything else big picture before we get into players that you're really keen in on?
I think for me, like, the wide receiver group overall is something that I want to see. I want to see some growth there. I think we feel really good about Vinny, but there's multiple guys in that room that we want to see, that we know that we have quality depth. And it sounds like it based off of what we're hearing from camp reports, but I need to see it to actually feel comfortable with it.
Yep, I think it's a good one. The other one I'll give you, it's an extension of the front seven. When they're doing this 11-11, they're going to have some live 11-11 scrimmage for this. We'll see how much of it is and how much of it's practice. But when there's a 3rd and 7, I want to see somebody beat somebody. I want to see, like, whether it's Peterson off the edge, whether you're bringing in Cheeks, whether it's whoever. Allegro.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I want to see personnel that makes sense on a 3rd and 7.
Yes. I want to see a race car package. Everyone calls it something different. The NASCAR package, the Badger package, whatever it is. Who's going to create havoc on 3rd down passing situations this year? Because Wisconsin didn't generate enough turnovers last year. You and I have talked about that. There is an element of luck with turnovers. Sometimes a ball bounces a certain way, but there's also an element of, if you hit the quarterback enough, he's going to throw picks.
Right. Or if you rush him, he's going to make decisions faster than he wants to, and timing in an offense just gets disrupted. And if a guy throws the ball a half second earlier than he wants to, maybe that defender hasn't cleared the open space to open a receiver up, and suddenly he's got a chance to make a play on the ball.
Let's hit on this now, because I want to do key players all next segment. I got a bunch of players I'm going to be keyed in on that people should key in on. How do they replace Kevin Heywood? Because we're going to be able to start to see the first steps in doing that. We kind of already talked about the loss of it and how much it hurts. Let's just talk tactically. How do you replace this guy?
Yeah, I think what you're going to end up doing over the course of the season, whoever ends up being in that spot, whether they go to the portal or not, I think you're going to see likelihood that the tight end or Acker is going to be used as somebody who's going to help kind of chip and stuff like that to make that transition a little bit easier. I would have felt good with Haywood being able to hold up on his own. I think now you're going to probably have to help that spot at least early in the season until you have somebody that you know you can rely on.
Yeah, I do think you're going to see a shift there for sure. Do you think the guy that's going to start there is in the portal right now, or do you think that guy's on the roster?
It's tough. I think you have to get a body simply because that room is so young. But I don't know if you're getting a starter. Like, I think you have to get a body for depth. And I think if you said that, you get Leighton Nelson for the remainder of spring here and then an entire fall camp, I think you might feel okay with him by the time games roll around. But I don't think you have anybody behind him that you feel comfortable with. No. And that is a major problem because you don't have a swing tackle anymore if he goes.
And that was
guys that maybe you'd play at right tackle. I don't know if there's anybody. I know Hardy Watts is taking some left tackle right now, but he's a true freshman. Like, Haywood was advanced coming in, and physically, I really like Hardy Watts. I don't want to make it seem like I'm down on him, but that's asking so much. And I don't know if he's the pedigree of Haywood. Like, I think you and I both agree, Haywood hits his ceiling. He's a first round pick.
Yeah, he is unique.
Hardy Watts has a chance to be a very, very good player and a pro. I don't know if he's got that level of just freakish frame / physical tools.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think you need a depth piece. I think Nelson is probably going to be the starter, but you got to find somebody else because otherwise you're shifting Brunner to the outside in the case of emergency. Then you got to fill in the guard.
Barrett Nelson was the backup there, right?
Yeah, he's hurt too, though.
I know he is.
Yeah.
Is he expected back? He's not out for the season, is he?
No, he's expected back, but again, you're starting to really roll the dice with
yeah, he's not up to speed, and you have to hope that he's going to be. There's no setbacks once he gets back on the field.
Maybe it's Emerson Mandel. Maybe Mandel is you kick him off the tackle.
Don't you do that to me, Ricky Bobby?
I'm telling you, like great classic case
Don't you put that evil on me?
I'm just telling you. All right, we're going to take a quick break there. We're going to come back and talk about players you need to look for. I'm going to tell you the guy who's the key to the season. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our friends of the show over on Amazon Fire Stick. Listen, I have one of these Amazon Fire Stick 4K. Incredible. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? That you can turn any TV into a gaming and entertainment hub with your Fire TV Stick 4K device. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premier titles, EA Sports College Football, Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, whatever it is, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple. It's all on your Fire TV. And if you know me, you know I love EA Sports. I'm actually playing for a championship coming up in our online dynasty, the Locked On Badgers dynasty. I took the Miami Hurricanes job. Don't hate on me. It is what it is. They recruit really well. I might need to use my Fire Stick to play remotely as I'm going down to Madison. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. That's Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including the Fire TV Stick 4K second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second generation, and Fire TV Cube third generation. All right, let's get some players that you're keyed in on here, Justin.
Well, first things first, I'll lead off with one because now that I said that before we went to the break, I want to be very clear on Emerson Mandel. I have said since the early start of the spring football, I expect him to be our starting guard. So I don't want to see him get shifted around when I feel like that's where I think that his ceiling is highest. And I think that that's where he can be the most dominant is if you put him in at one of the guard slots. And you obviously have Brunner already at left, so you're putting him probably in at right. I just think he can be an absolute monster in there. And I think that he could do that by the end of this season. Like, I think he can be a solid starter to start and be a guy who really grows into something special by the end of the season.
It could be a situation, though, where Kerry Kadonko, who's the other guy who's been playing guard, is solid. He's a solid enough starter, right? And Emerson Mandel gives you something at tackle athletically that you just say, we got to get our 5 best on the field.
Yeah.
And that might end up being the best 5.
And we've talked about that before. I've said that I think that he's so athletic that I think you can play him and he can be probably a good tackle. But I think that he can be an elite guard if everything comes together based off his athletic ability and just how physical and dominant he is. Some of his film in high school is really fun to watch.
It is enjoyable. But he could be that next year, right? Like maybe he's a good tackle this year. Kadonko graduates. Haywood comes back next year. And next year Emerson is your starter.
Maybe you play him at guard and in the situation where he's just going to have to practice multiple positions in practice.
Which is what he's been kind of doing, right? The last couple of years they've had him at tackle and guard. So there are reps there. I could see that route. But I would say this, at least it happened now. So you can experiment with him at tackle or Kadonko or Brunner or whatever.
We'll figure out if it will even work. Like, is he even a possibility?
They have time to at least figure it out. I'm going to give you my guy that I think if you're coming to spring showcase, if you're coming to watch a team for the first time, it's obvious. It's Billy Edwards.
Yes. Yep.
Like you because it's the quarterback. And if he plays well this year, and when I say well, I just mean he gives you Jack Conish type production.
Yep.
He gives you 2017 maybe Hornibrook, even though I'm not as high on that, but whatever. He gives you solid.
We could do without the 3-pick games.
Against Ohio State, yeah. We'll take the Miami bowl game version of Hornibrook, but if you just get solid quarterback play from Billy Edwards Jr., people are down on that. Like, why can't you get it? The difference from what you had last year to a solid quarterback is immense for this offense.
Yeah.
So that's who to look for. Well,
and the running game is just going to be better in general. So that's going to be the starting point that you look at. If that's who he is, listen, Kansas, the quarterback position was not good last year. I know they have Jalen Daniels, who's a guy who has a ton of upside. His splits were 15 to 12 touchdowns to picks. They still scored 30 points per game. Like, if you get a cone year out of him, you have a chance to be very, very good offensively. If he puts together an 18-5 type season like we saw in 2019, you could be looking at 8 wins. Like that type. That's the type of season if he's that efficient, which I will say people can look at this offense, and what they need to understand is this is all going to be predicated off the run. He is going to throw the football, but they're going to give him opportunities where a lot of the time it's going to be pretty simple for him to get his reads. It's not going to happen as much in camp because a lot of the periods are, hey, this is a passing period. We're going to be running this, or, this is a run set. So it's a lot easier for the defense to key on stuff. This offense is showcased most by being very difficult to figure out what the offense is trying to do. Like the deception that's put into it is what makes it so special. And you can't really get that in the spring period where, number one, you're implementing it. And number two, your goal is to simply run things correctly rather than actually, catch the defense in a bind.
Right. And you and I both talked about it. The physical tools for Edwards are there to be a good Big Ten quarterback. He's big enough. He's fast enough. He has a good enough arm. It's there. We got to see it. This is a good time for me to throw my first buy and sell up here. I got more buy and sells in the next segment, but because we're talking about Billy Edwards, it makes sense. Buy or sell Billy Edwards, 2,500 passing yards. Before you answer, okay, I was going to say before you answer, he had 2,800 last year at Maryland.
He sat out a game too.
And he sat out a game. Cohn had 2,700. Hornibrook had 2,700-ish one year. So you're buying this.
Yes. I like the receivers that they actually have that I think are going to be in the first group. And I think there's a couple of bodies that are actually pushing that make that a pretty probably deep room for us compared to a normal Wisconsin year. I think we're on the same page with who we think is starting, probably Vinny and probably Ballard on the outside. And then you have some guys who are really pushing in, Brooks seems to be having a really good camp. We know Tretch is going to be out there. You have Tyrell Henry, who's had a good camp. So there's a lot of guys that are kind of keeping. And then obviously the Rajiv's favorite, Eugene Hilton Jr.
Hilton.
Yeah, he's got an opportunity to be a very good player as a true freshman. I don't know how many reps that means, but I do think he's going to be in the mix.
I have a buy and sell for him coming up too. So I think this number is actually really close. I don't think he's going to throw for 2,800 yards like he did at Maryland last year. I think they're going to run the ball a lot here. The schedule is at times pretty difficult, which is going to impact it. I think 20.
He might throw more because of that.
He could. I sometimes worry what that means for him in this offense. Maybe from a yardage standpoint, it helps though. I don't want him having to throw more. Like I think we lose games if we have to rely on him by being able to mix it up.
So what I will say is I think he's going to have to be balanced because of the level of schedule that we have. There's not going to be a lot of games where he's going to be able to just sit on it and be like, we can just run it down their throat. There's going to be multiple. There's at least 3 teams that we won't be able to do that. Probably 4 if you throw Michigan in there. You're not going to be able to just run the ball down Bama, Michigan, Oregon, or Ohio State.
Or Iowa. You're not going to roll them either.
Yeah.
Like you'll have to throw against all those teams. I'm going to take buy on this, but I am cautiously buying on this. I don't think it's a lock. All right, next one here. Actually, no, we'll do the rest of the buy or sell next because I want to get to a couple more players that you're really keen in on. I led off with Edwards. Who's another player you're really keying in on?
It was one of your guys, Dilin Jones.
Oh, dude, I love him.
Listen, I've took so much flack with that, like because I like Dupree, and everyone being like, well, Justin doesn't like Jones. I love Jones. I think that he's actually, and I've said this before, I think he is the most true running back out of that group, the 3 that they brought in. Dupree just offers some different skills that I think there are things that add some flash to Wisconsin that Jones is a little different. Jones is, let's put it this way, he's like your rugged SUV, and Dupree's kind of like your little sports car that you want to send out there in space. So Jones is your all-purpose guy. And I know you had a buy and sell that you said you were going to throw out there on him. I'm actually buying that.
I'm going to too.
Yeah.
People don't know that. But yeah, we're definitely buying that.
Yeah. So I think he's going to be really good this year. I actually think that this is his coming out party this year.
I love that. And by the way, Nissan Armada, sponsor of the show, shout out. Dilin Jones is at Nissan Armada, ready to carry this team. Yeah, I like him a lot. I'll give you a freshman that I'm looking for because we talked Eugene Hilton, we talked some of these other pieces. I would say if you're going to spring practice and you want to look down at maybe who could be coming up the next couple of years, look at the safeties. Luke Emmerich, Grant Dean. Luke Emmerich's already been kind of working into some 2-deep stuff. I like him a ton. He can run. He's athletic. He likes to throw his body around. He's a guy, not this year, but a couple of years from now, you might be able to point back and see, I remember seeing him flash a little bit at that spring showcase. So I'll throw that out there if you're looking for a young guy to kind of eye in on.
Yeah, and another Wisconsin product, Cooper.
Oh, Cooper Catalano, inside linebacker.
Yep. He has been having an incredible camp for a true freshman. He's a guy that's this is going to be really interesting because I did not expect him to pop this quickly. I thought he'd be a really good player. I did not expect him to be a guy who was going to flash this much as a true freshman, especially with Mason Posa coming in.
Mm-hmm.
There is a better than 0% chance that Wisconsin has 2 true freshmen backup inside linebackers, because I can tell you right now, Mason Posa has a chance to be an absolute just X factor type guy from day one. Whether if he can get his feet wet quick enough, he's got that type of playmaking ability, and Cooper clearly has some of that too.
Cooper's instincts play up. That's something that, if you talk to people, he's a true middle linebacker. The thing with Posa, you just got to leg grow and tack it there. The same with Cooper, right? And now Cooper has a leg up because he's got here early. I think it's gonna be tough for Posa to get into that mix this year because of A, how good we think Allegro is gonna be, but B, Tackett Curtis is the other guy I had listed here. He looks like the healthier version of what we wanted.
I said 2 deep. Yep.
No, I got you.
But there's some other guys, and Tyrion Turner has had a good camp too, and he's a guy that's going to be in there. So it's a really interesting. The defensive side of the ball, I know people really were down on it last year. It feels like a lot of the guys. What I will say is we don't know what the top end is going to be. It feels like none of them are flat out misses. Like they all seem like they can play football. The question is to what level they can play it.
Yeah. What's the ceiling there? I think that's fair. All right, we're going to take a quick break there, friends of the show. Come back, and I got some more buy or sells for Justin and for y'all, including that Dilin Jones ones we'll lead off with. Dilin Jones, buy or sell, 1,000 yards. That's coming up next, Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show and a quick second to say thank you for tuning in as always. Let's lead off with that one, man. Buy or sell, Dilin Jones, 1,000 yards. I think you already said you're buying. What if I had made that 1,100?
It gets closer. I don't think he's going to be more than like 11 or 12. I think there's going to be so many split up carries in that, but I do think the running game is going to play. We talked about it, how Kansas last year didn't have a back under 5.8 that was actually received a reasonable number of carries. That's a really big number for 3 guys to all be above 5.8. For perspective, our top guy last year, if you look at heavy carries, was 4.5. So that's over a yard difference. And he's probably got a better offensive line here. Not that Kansas's offensive line was bad, but I would say I would lean towards ours in terms of overall talent level across.
I think I'm going to sell this, but it's no knock on Dilin. I just think I think it's to your point. I think you're going to see a lot of Darian Dupree. I think you're going to see a decent amount of Katie Akameli. I think you're going to see a decent amount of quarterback run. I think you're going to see a decent amount of receptions being spread around. I don't know if he's going to quite get to 1,000. I think he's going to be an effective 800 or 900. He's just going to be right underneath that. But if he does, it won't surprise me at all. Buy or sell Eugene Hilton Jr., 20 receptions.
That's a pretty big number. There's a part of me that wants to say buy, but I'm going to sell on it. I think he's probably going to get into the teens. I think he's going to be that effective, and he's going to get on the field a fair amount. But the question is, even if he gets on the field, how often is he going to be the guy that they target?
Yep, I'm with you. I'm selling this as well. I think 14, 15 is pretty reasonable. Listen, Tretch is going to come back. He's going to eat up some reps. You got Vinny. You got, obviously, Ballard coming in. There's a couple other guys that have flashed. 18, 19, 20 is a lot for a true freshman.
And one of the pluses with him is he does have the option of being able to play the slot too. Like he's got a well-rounded enough skill set that you can play him at all 3 spots.
And here's the other thing. If this was a different offense, maybe if we were talking not Longo's offense, because we're not buying anything with that.
If it was the Ohio State version of a run spread, like we're going to be what I will say is we're not completely different than what Ohio State wants to do. We lean more on the conservative side of it versus them being more pass happy.
Yeah, and we're going to run the ball a lot. So I'm going to sell this as well. Christian Allegro, 13 TFLs, which for reference is going to put him kind of around some of those Chris Orr numbers, maybe on the lower side of those Chris Orr numbers, but certainly higher than anything this team had last year.
I would say yes. I think the defensive line is going to open things up for the linebackers to flow a lot more, which I think is going to create some of that. I think if there's one guy you look at on the defensive side of the football who I think is going to be a star this year, it's Allegro.
I'm going to buy this as well. I think this defensive line, I responded to a question the other day, and I'm curious what you think of this. Someone said, well, why are you so high on the defensive line now with those transfer guys when the transfer linebackers didn't work out and you were high on them? What's the difference? And I think the difference is we built it in reverse order. You have to get the defensive line in place before those linebackers. And we kind of got the linebackers first without the defensive line. So the Piuses and the Lowry, while they didn't play as well as they should have, they also weren't put in a great spot for linebackers to flow around and make plays.
Yeah, I think what I would say with regard to the Lowry and Pius is some of it was schematic. They didn't want them pinning their ears because the middle of the line was so bad that you're just opening up places for ball carriers. If you have guys crashing hard off the edge, if they get pushed out by the tackle, suddenly you have room to run. And I think that they were probably told to be at least somewhat more conservative and make sure that they held the edge. But that being said, it still doesn't make an excuse for how bad the defense was last year. Things will be better this year in terms of disruption numbers. I have no idea what that means. Listen, if we get back to middle of the pack in terms of nationally, it would be a substantial difference. And it probably makes the difference in a couple of wins or losses this year, if you get to that point. Because what I can tell you is at some point, somebody's going to get home on a play that's going to lead to a turnover that's in an advantageous field position, or you're going to pick somebody off for a pick six, or you're just going to get a stop when you need one. That last year's team just wasn't really capable of those three things.
Yep, agreed. I think we're both buying that one. Last one here, buy or sell, we make a bowl game this year. But I'm going to change this a little bit. A real bowl game, meaning you have to win 7 games, not the 6-6 bowl game.
I believe in Grimes' offense. I'm going to say yes, because I think the defense is actually going to be improved. I'm not going to be like saying we're going to go 8-4. This is going to take a lot going right. But if the offense gets close to 30 points per game, which I think is attainable, I think you need Billy Edwards to be healthy the whole year, but I do think they can get to 7-5.
I'm going to buy it too. Of course, I've been wrong the last 3 years. I bought over on those.
At some point, we got to be right?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, to be fair, if they won 6, they would hit the over. But I do think they're going to get to 7. I think it's the offense, to your point, Billy Edwards, you're bigger on the front 7. And honestly, some of those younger guys that you're going to count on, Dilin Jones is going to be better than Tyree Walker last year. I'm pretty confident.
Oh, absolutely.
So
I don't think, and I think Jalen Ballard is going to be potentially a legitimate stud on this team. Like, I'm not saying that he's going to put up huge numbers, but he's going to be somebody the defense is going to absolutely have to account for going deep. He's got that kind of speed.
I agree. Let me ask you this, because I want to end on that. I think it's a great point. Vinny had a really good year last year. Vinny averaged, I don't have it in front of me, but like 18 yards a catch or something phenomenal. What was the best other deep option Wisconsin had last year?
Probably Green.
Like, there's a scenario here
15 or something like that, but he's not a burner.
No,
he's not Ballard.
This is what I'm
Ballard
saying.
is somebody who legit, if you miss your press off the line, you better hope you have safety help or you're done.
Well, and this is what I'm saying is now you have a scenario.
Quincy Burrows, except he's more refined.
Right. You have a scenario now where you have 2 guys that you actually have to respect, and
which gives you a lot of room underneath.
That can open up.
Now you open up space for the quarterback to work a little bit. You're going to have running backs that could circle out. There's just a lot of positives to having that kind of speed on the outside.
Yep. And we got it. Now, it's got to click, but we got it at least. All right, we're going to wrap it there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you're heading down to the spring showcase and you see Justin and I wandering around drinking beer and eating, come say hi. We will be there. Hopefully, it's better than the launch that we went to, that we sat through snow and sleet and multiple interceptions. And it's got to be better than that. So thank you for tuning in on Wisconsin, and we will definitely talk later.